I think about that night often. My grandfather brought home that strange dog about 3 months ago. I had returned to my small hometown to help him out, but being in that old house felt lonely. I was 25 and a graphic designer, a world away from the memories this house held. The weather was dreary that evening. Rain tapped against the windows like nervous fingers. I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through old photographs when my grandfather walked in. He was soaked, droplets streaming down his face. Behind him, a shaggy dog stepped inside. It had bright eyes, too bright, and its stare felt oddly unsettling. It looked at me like it knew something I didn't see. I felt unease wash over me. Why grandfather smiled wide when he said the dog was harmless. I wanted to believe him, but I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Not long after, I started noticing the dog's strange behavior. I saw it bark at shadows. It would sit in front of the window, staring out into the woods for long minutes. My heart raced whenever I noticed it gone at dusk. One moment it was right there beside me, and the next it vanished. I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks. Still, my grandfather seemed to slip deeper into himself, mumbling about things I couldn't quite catch out a week past. One night, I heard a noise coming from my grandfather's room, a low growl, almost like a whisper. Curiosity drew me to check. My grandfather slept soundly, but the dog was there. It sat at the foot of the bed, staring at nothing. A chill crept up my spine, and I backed away slowly. The next day, I felt the need for fresh air. The dog followed me outside, its eyes glued to the woods. I felt a strange pull, an urge to see what lay beyond the trees. I told myself to stay in the yard, but my feet moved without my permission. I took a few steps toward the tree line. The dog barked, not at me, but toward something in the depths of the woods. Panic filled my chest, and I stepped back. Days turned into a blur of my grandfather's growing attachment to the dog. I often heard strange mutterings at night. I wanted to ask my grandfather about it, but never did. I felt there was something off about that dog and my grandfather-esque connection to a point one evening. I sat down for dinner when I heard a loud crash. The dog was gone. I bolted to the door, heart racing. Where had it gone? The shadows beyond were darker. I thought I saw it lurking near the woods, eyes glowing in the dim light. I called out, but it didn't respond. Then I heard my grandfather mumbling again. I turned toward him. He stared right at me, gaze heavy and unsettling. Something changed in the room. I felt trapped between the woods and my grandfather's stare. I could feel that whatever had followed him home that rainy night was not finished with us yet. I spent the night restless. The scratching at the window, the muffled whispers, and the darkness felt thicker than before. I didn't sleep. I kept questioning if my grandfather was really there or just a shell of the man I remembered. Morning light crept in, and I made myself coffee, hoping the warmth would help my jittery nerves. I needed answers. The dog was still missing, and with it, a dread settled heavily on my chest. After breakfast, I decided to explore the woods. Maybe I would find the dog. Maybe I would find clarity that I walked cautiously toward the edge of the trees, each step heavier than the last. The air grew still, clinging to me like a wet blanket. I stopped at the tree line. The shadows beneath the branches seemed to shift, and I felt the urge to step back. But I had to know. "Here, boy," I called, my voice breaking the silence. It echoed back unnervingly, as if mocking me. I took a tentative step forward. The woods felt foreign, like they belonged to a different world entirely. I peered deeper into the trees. That S when I saw it. A glimmer of white fur poking through the underbrush. My heart sank. It could be the dog, but something kept me from moving closer. A prickling sensation washed over me, and I glanced back toward the house. No one was there, just silence that I decided to push forward. As I neared the spot, I noticed an old, twisted tree. Its gnarled roots looked like fingers clawing at the ground. Hidden among the roots was a small, torn piece of fabric, a patch from a dog collar. My stomach churned. This felt wrong. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled from beneath the roots. I froze, pulse racing. The sound was familiar. It was the same growl I heard coming from my grandfather's room. My breath hitched. I peered closer, bracing myself, and saw the bright eyes reflected back at me. The dog was there, but something wasn't right. It seemed restless. Before I could back away, the dog leaped from its hiding spot. It fixed its eyes on me, not the friendly gaze I had hoped for, but something more fierce. As it approached, I could see the tension in its muscles, taut and ready. I stood frozen in place, and then footsteps behind me. I whipped around, and my grandfather was there, appearing as if from nowhere. He looked different. His eyes were sunken, the shadows beneath them deep. He raised a finger to his lips, silently asking me to be quiet, but it felt like a warning. "What did you do?" I whispered, fear spilling out before I could stop it. His gaze drifted toward the dog, then returned to me, a thin smile creeping onto his lips. "You don't understand, do you? It's ours now. It belongs to us." My heart sank as a dark realization washed over me. I wasn't in control anymore. The woods, the dog, the mystery, everything was slipping through my fingers, and I had no way to fight back. Then, the dog's low growl morphed into a deep bark, echoing through the trees like the sound of an approaching storm. The air buzzed with energy, and I knew then that something had changed. The woods didn't just hold secrets. They wanted to claim me too. I didn't move. My eyes were locked on the dog, but it felt like my mind was trapped in quicksand. Panic welled inside me. The forest, with its twisted branches and dark foliage, loomed closer, as if it were alive, ready to swallow me whole. "Stay back!" I heard myself shout, desperate to keep the fear from creeping into my voice. The dog's posture shifted, muscles rippling under its fur. It seemed to sense my dread, responding with a series of low, throaty growls that echoed in the stillness. "You should listen to it," my grandfather said, his voice smooth yet chilling. "It knows the truth." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned and stumbled backward, suddenly aware of how far from the house I had strayed. I wanted to run, to escape the madness unfurling around me. But the dog advanced slowly, its eyes narrowing. "What truth?" I rasped, fearing the answer. "The truth of loyalty," he said, stepping forward. His shadow fell over me, a dark reminder of the man I used to trust. The truth of bond. He didn't seem himself. His words dripped with something sinister. I glanced back at the dog, still locked on me. Whatever bond it had, it wasn't with me. My grandfather glanced at the dog, seeming to share some unspoken understanding. My heart thundered. The fear threatened to choke me. Before I could comprehend, my grandfather took another step towards the dog, whispering a series of low words that were indistinct but felt wrong. My mind raced. What was he doing? Against my better judgment, I took a small step back, wishing to remain unseen by whatever force was at play. In that moment, the dog reacted, lunging forward with a speed that stole the breath from my lungs. My instinct kicked and I turned and ran. The underbrush whipped against my legs. I didn't dare look back, just pushed deeper into the thickets, driven by the sharp crack of twigs underfoot. But the growling didn't fade. It was joined by footsteps, heavy and relentless. I could hear my grandfather calling, "Don't run. You're just making it worse." Worse? How could it get worse? I shouted back, breathless. I didn't want to confront him. I just wanted to escape. The woods thickened with shadows, branches clawing at me as I stumbled, pushing further away from the nightmare. Then, something caught my eye, a glimmer of something shiny half buried in the leaves. I skidded to a stop. What was it? My curiosity clashed with my survival instinct. Whatever it was, I couldn't risk the dog finding me. But I also couldn't leave without knowing. I crouched and uncovered an old, rusted pendant. As I examined it, a jolt of recognition hit me. This wasn't random, this belonged to someone I knew. The pendant had been lost, rumored to connect to old family lore, a legacy that could lead to dark truths. The sudden snap of a branch broke my focus. My heart dropped. The dog was coming. It was so close. I had to make a choice. Fight back with the pendant or flee deeper into the woods, knowing it might be my only chance to uncover the truth behind the darkness blooming around my grandfather. I stood there, heart pounding, caught between fear and the overwhelming need to understand. The woods seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my decision. Then, I heard a voice, not my grandfather's, not the dog S. A voice that whispered 2 words, choose wisely. I hesitated, my hand clenching the pendant. The growling grew louder, a chilling promise of the dog's intent. I could feel its hot breath wafting through the air. I glanced over my shoulder. The beast was closer, muscles coiled, eyes aflame with a wild instinct. In that moment, I made up my mind. I couldn't run forever. There was something about the pendant, a connection to my family's past that I needed to understand. I stood tall, forcing my voice to be steady. If you want the truth, then come and get it. The dog paused, a flicker of surprise in its eyes. I swallowed hard, holding up the pendant like a shield against its fury. This is part of your truth. I assented. Then my grandfather stepped into view behind the dog, ominously calm. You don't understand what you're doing, he warned, but there was an edge to his voice, a hint of desperation that made me question his intentions. That pendant shouldn't be here. Why? What does it matter? It's just a piece of metal. I cried, realizing too late how hollow and naive my words sounded. The forest quaked with tension around us. Not just metal, he said. It holds power. Before I could process this, the dog lunged again, and I flung the pendant towards it, more to distract it than anything. It caught the glimmer of metal, shifting its gaze momentarily. I seized the moment, sprinting to the left, weaving through the trees. But the dog was relentless. Its growl reverberated through the woods, taunting me. My legs burned as I ducked branches and leapt over roots. I couldn't keep this up. I felt the strain in every muscle. Suddenly, I stumbled into a clearing. The moonlight broke through the canopy, illuminating a rundown shack ahead. I hesitated. Safety? Or more danger? A mix of dread and curiosity pushed me forward. Inside, cobwebs hung in layers like curtains. A few broken chairs and rusted tools lay scattered about. But what caught my eye was a table at the center. There, amidst the decay, stood an old book. It looked as if it had been untouched for ages, its leather cover cracked and faded. The growling grew quieter outside. I had a moment, and I darted towards the book, hoping to find some answers. As I brushed off the dust, the title became faintly visible, Heritage of the Bonds. It made my heart race. That was at the connection, the legacy my grandfather had mentioned. I flipped through the pages, trying to absorb as much as I could in my escalating urgency. Names and dates scrawled in faded ink. A history of my ancestors, their ties to the forest, their rituals. No casual reader would ever guess this was what linked us to the dark shadows lurking in the woods. But before I could delve deeper, the shack creaked ominously. My instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. The door rattled, as if something was trying to get in. I had to move. Fast. I tucked the book under my arm, just as the door splintered inward, and the dog surged through the threshold, teeth bared, ready to pounce. As it lunged at me, the words from the book flashed in my mind. Only those who know the truth can hold the bond. I realized then it wasn't only my grandfather's secrets that haunted this woods. It ran deeper. Heart pounding, I braced myself for the oncoming storm as the dog leapt towards me, expecting to taste fear, but instead, perhaps, a different kind of reckoning. The dog lunged with a ferocity that sent my heart into overdrive. I ducked to the side, barely escaping its snapping jaws. The moment felt suspended in time, and I could feel the heat radiating off its fur as it barreled past me. I stumbled back against a wall of the shack, my fingers instinctively gripping the book tighter. The growling echoed around me, an ominous soundtrack to my rising panic. "What do you want?" I shouted, half trying to reason with it, half appealing to whatever part of me believed in an ounce of understanding between creatures. The dog turned around, fixing its wild eyes on me again. I took a shaky breath, knowing I needed to calm down. I couldn't let fear cripple me. I had to figure out the bond. The book held secrets, knowledge that might save me. As I flipped through the pages again, the dog circled the room, sniffing the air, its growls remaining low and threatening. "Please," I muttered, "just let me understand." I paused on a page adorned with intricate sketches depicting a ceremonial rite. The images of people bound together with blazing symbols made my gut twist. What had my ancestors been involved in? Every passing second felt like a countdown, the air thickening with urgency. The more I studied, the more the words began to connect. There was a ritual mention that involved a pendant and an ancient guardian. The kindness my grandfather had sheltered around the dog was fading. This wasn't merely a beast, it was a guardian of a family legacy. The growl grew louder, breaking my concentration. I looked up in time to see the dog barreling toward me again. Just then, my grandfather's warning replayed in my mind. That pendant shouldn't be here. I needed to reclaim my grasp on this moment. The door behind me was unsteady, and I glanced back. A figure loomed just outside the shack, dark and shapeless, its presence sending a chill down my spine. I had no idea who or what lurked beyond. Suddenly, a realization hit me. Perhaps the dog wasn't my enemy. It was trying to protect something far greater than itself. "Stop!" I cried out, my voice sharper than before. "I want to understand." I reached out, book in hand, hoping the glowing pendant still hung around my neck would resonate with the creature. The dog hesitated, its growl wavering. I could sense its curiosity battling against instinct. Before fear could gain the upper hand, I took a step forward, holding the book like an offering. When the moonlight glinted off the pendant and illuminated the room, something shifted. The dog's posture softened, and it sat back on its haunches, a low growl morphing into an almost questioning whine. Then, a loud crash erupted as the figure outside rushed the door, sending splinters flying. The dog turned its fierce gaze back toward the door. My pulse quickened. Whatever that was, it wasn't friendly. "Get away from me!" I yelled as the door swung open, revealing a shadowy face that reminded me of nightmares. The dog sprang to its feet, a protective barrier between me and the threat threatening to spill inside. "Stay behind me," I whispered, more to gather my courage than to instruct the dog. The air crackled with tension as the figure stepped through the door, and I knew things were about to spiral out of control. The figure stepped fully into the shack, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. It was a man, but not one I recognized. His face was obscured by shadows, but a glint of something sharp caught my eye knife. My heart raced as icy dread twisted in my gut. "Hand over the pendant," he demanded, his voice low and gravelly. There was an urgency in his tone, like he'd been searching for it for ages. The dog growled again, a fierce warning to stay back, and in that moment, I felt the full weight of its protectiveness. I could sense the tension, a silent agreement between us. I tightened my grip on the book and the pendant, feeling the warmth from the glowing jewel against my skin. "You don't have to do this," I stammered, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I don't even know what this pendant is." His eyes narrowed, and he took a cautious step forward. "You were never meant to have it. Give it to me now." The anger in his voice ignited a spark of defiance within me. I couldn't just hand over something I barely understood. "I'm not giving you anything." I shot back, surprising myself with my boldness. The dog lunged again, teeth bared. The man faltered, eyes flicking between me and the creature. "You're just making this harder for yourself," he growled, raising the knife. I didn't think, I just reacted. "Stay," I yelled at the dog, hoping it could understand my command even amid the chaos. It hesitated, a low growl still rumbling in its chest, but I needed it focused. The man moved fast, lunging for me, and I ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as he passed. I darted sideways, heart pounding in my ears. My grandfather's words echoed in my head. The pendant had power. I needed to learn how to wield it. As the man turned, I could see the desperation in his eyes. "You don't know what you're dealing with." But the dog was already back in position, a fierce guardian ready to defend me. "Help me," I shouted, half pleading with the dog, half appealing to whatever ancient bond was between us. The dog seemed to understand, muscles coiling as if waiting for my signal. I paced backward toward the light from the door, the pendant hanging between us like a beacon to AT that moment. I remembered a passage from the book about the pendant as strength. I could feel it pulsing against my chest. "I need you," I whispered, The dog glanced at me, its growl steady, sensing the urgency of the situation. Then everything happened in an instant. The man lunged at me again, but my instincts kicked in. I grasped the pendant and raised it towards him. I don't know how, but I'm not afraid of you. To my shock, a surge of warmth filled the room as the pendant began to glow brighter. The light enveloped us, and the air shimmered. The man faltered again, stepping back, confusion flitting across his features. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the shadows shifting behind him. With a jolt, I realized I wasn't just fighting a man. There were darker forces at play. Something inside me screamed that this was only the beginning, and I had to uncover the truths lurking in the pages of my book before it was too late. "Stay back," I yelled again as the shadows stirred. I wasn't sure if I meant for the man or the growing darkness that threatened us both. The light from the pendant brightened, casting strange, flickering shadows on the walls. The man staggered backward, eyes wide with a mix of fear and anger. The dog let out a low growl, instinctively sensing a change in the atmosphere. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, the air thick with anticipation. "Stop!" I shouted, even though I knew I was powerless against whatever forces were at play. The shadows behind the man took on shapes, dark and twisting, almost alive. The realization hit me. Whatever I was holding wasn't just a pendant. It was a conduit for something far beyond my understanding. "Give it to me," he shouted again, his voice strained. The desperation in his tone felt different now, like a man drowning. I could see it clearly, the hope in his eyes mixed with fear, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But my own fear quickly snuffed out that sympathy. There was no telling what he would do if he got his hands on the pendant. "I can't," I said, my voice shaking, but my grip tightened on the jewel. The shadows grew bolder, reaching towards the man like fingers eager to ensnare him. He cursed under his breath and brandished the knife more aggressively, as if slicing through the air could dispel the darkness. "You think you can protect it? You don't know what you're unleashing. What are you talking about?" I shot back, trying to buy time to understand. "Elders," he said, almost to himself. "The pendant is a key. It opens doors best left shut." Panic tightened my chest. What door? What kind of power was I holding? As if to answer me, the pendant pulsed again, sending ripples of light across the room. The shadows recoiled from its brilliance, and the dog stepped forward, growling low, its posture protective. I could feel it. We were in this together. I recalled the ancient words from my grandfather's book, the warnings, but also the promises. Maybe this pendant could help us. I took a deep breath, a shot of courage coursing through me. "Stay back," I screamed again, and the ambient light surged in response. The man hesitated, confusion evident in his eyes. "You have no idea what you're doing." "And you do?" I retorted, frustration bubbling up. "You're just some guy who barged in here, threatening me. Why do you want this so badly? What's at stake?" His face contorted in anger and desperation, but before he could respond, a sharp crack echoed in the room. The shadows twisted violently, and something cold and dark erupted from behind him, a shape creeping forward. I gasped. It was more than just a shadow. It had form, pooling around his feet, snaking up his legs. Sudden dread flooded me. "No, get away from him," I shouted, realizing too late that I couldn't help him if this darkness took hold. The man cried out in panic, thrashing wildly as he fought against the dark tendrils. In that moment, I saw my chance. "You want the pendant? You can have it," I yelled, lifting it higher. Maybe if I activated it fully, it could push back the shadows. And that's when I felt it, an overwhelming current, a force trying to break free from the pendant. I braced myself, knowing there was no turning back now. The light from the pendant flared brighter, and I felt an unfamiliar energy surge through me. It was like standing in a storm, every hair on my body standing on end. My thoughts raced. I didn't know how to control this power, or what would happen if I did. I only hoped it was enough. "Take it," I yelled again, holding the pendant out. The shadows around the man writhed, dark tendrils clutching at him like a vice. He let out a desperate scream, and I felt a twinge of guilt. He was terrified, but I wasn't ready to hand over something so powerful. Then it hit me. This pendant wasn't just a key for him. It was an anchor for something much worse. The shadows were feeding off of his fear. I needed to change the game. I looked at the man, his face a mask of rage and despair. You wanted this power, but it's consuming you. You need to let it go, I shouted. Somehow, those words had power. The shadows hesitated, drawing back slightly. Shut up, he screamed, but in his eyes, I saw a flicker of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, he realized he was in over his head. I took a step closer, emboldened by that small spark of hope. The pendant can help, but only if we work together. I urged. What door does it open? We can stop this. He blinked, the knife wavering in his grip. You don't understand. The elders, they want it back. If I don't deliver, they will come for me. My heart raced at the mention of the elders. They were the ancient guardians mentioned in my grandfather's tales, the ones who held powers that could either save or destroy. Why do they want it? I asked, trying to keep him from slipping back under the shadow's spell. It's their legacy, he cried out, frustration boiling over. But they're not what you think. They aren't benevolent. They want to reclaim what's theirs, and I am a mere pawn, a heartbeat away from disappearing. The shadows lurched, driving deeper into his skin. In a burst of clarity, I remembered the incantation my grandfather had taught me. It was only a whisper in the wind, but it was worth a shot. Furus, ex qualis, omnes in lusum. I recited, urging the pendant's light further. The air crackled, and the shadows recoiled. I felt a push back from the pendant, as if it recognized the power of those ancient words. No, what are you doing? The man was panicking now, shadows stretching with a will of their own, dragging him down. Now or never, I thought. Let go of it. I shouted. Let go of the fear. I focused on the pendant, calling on whatever ancient magic lay within. The light expanded, blossoming like wide-open wings, washing over us both. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The shadows stopped moving, and the man's eyes widened in shock. Then, in a flash, the darkness shattered like glass. When the light faded, the man was gone. The air felt different. The weight of shadows had lifted. But the pendant pulsed softly in my hand, a lingering whisper carried on a breeze. Then, before I could process what had just happened, I heard a soft whimper. I turned to find the dog, still by my side, but now watching a crack in the wall. That crack seemed deeper than before. I felt a knot form in my stomach. It wasn't over. Something had shifted, and whatever it was just waiting for me to look closer. I took a step back, my heart racing. The crack was not just a crack anymore. It looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. The dog whined again, nudging me with his wet nose, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing with thoughts of what had just happened. Where was that man? Had I really sent him away? The pendant hung heavily in my palm. Its soft glow felt like a heartbeat, quiet but insistent. Even though the darkness had receded, I sensed a warning within that light. Whatever I had unleashed in this moment wasn't to be taken lightly. I crouched closer to the crack. It flickered with shadows, pulsating in time with the pendant. As I traced the edges, I realized it wasn't just darkness. There were shapes lurking within blurred faces, cries, and whispers. Fear gripped me again. Okay, I whispered to myself, more a plea than a statement. Just breathe. But instead, I felt the air hitch in my throat as the shadows coiled tighter, as if reacting to my hesitation. Suddenly, the dog barked, a sharp, fragmented sound that pulled me back. I snapped my head towards him. What is it? I asked, though I wasn't sure what I expected him to say. Then, I saw at the shadow within the crack formed clearer outlines. It wasn't just a void. It looked like another world, a gate, or a passage. I squinted. A soft voice reached out, but I couldn't make out the words. Just murmurs wrapped in desperation. Maybe it leads to the elders, I thought aloud. Cold dread swept over me. If it was true, and if those elders were anything like the man I faced, then there was no telling what could come through. The dog whined again, tensed, muscles coiled like springs. I could feel anxiety radiating from him, sharp and electric. Stay back, I warned softly, stepping between him and the crack. The urge to turn and flee was strong, but I held my ground. I raised the pendant closer to the crack. Show me, I shouted, defiance spilling past my lips. In that moment, the shadows churned, and for a brief second, the darkness shifted, revealing a figure standing inside. I squinted harder, and my stomach dropped. Familiar features stared back at me. It was my grandfather, his eyes wide and pleading. Panic washed over me, followed by a surge of disbelief. "Grandpa?" I croaked, repeating the name like a mantra. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, the shadows behind him surged forward, clawing desperately around him. "Help me!" he finally shouted, but it was a choked cry, drowned out by the shadows. My breath hitched. Then, just as quickly, the image flickered like a bad film reel, and he was gone. I stumbled back, reeling from the shock. Was that really him? As I stood there, the lingering presence of the pendant pulsed in my hand, strong and determined. Everything was spiraling out of control. I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I had to confront the darkness head-on. But how? The words from my grandfather echoed in my mind. Warnings and wisdom tangled with my rising fear. I had to find out what lay beyond that crack. Before I could second-guess myself, I stepped closer, prepared to confront whatever came next. The air thickened, charged with a force I could barely comprehend. It was time to face the shadows. I closed my eyes for a moment, drawing in a deep breath, trying to ground myself amid the chaos. The weight of the pendant in my hand felt like a lifeline, yet the words of my grandfather echoed ominously in my mind. The elders want it back. My fear, mixed with curiosity, pushing me forward. "Help me," echoed in my thoughts, my grandfather's voice piercing the fog of uncertainty. I had to understand what had happened, had to face this unknown. The shadows inside the crack shifted and writhed, dark tendrils straining toward me. Deep down, I felt the pull of their promises, but I also sensed their danger. "I need to do this," I whispered, half to myself, half to the ever-watchful dog at my side. "Whatever lies within, it's part of the bond you and your family have to confront," I thought, glancing towards the still crack that seemed to yearn for acknowledgement. I stepped closer, feeling the magnetic force draw me in. I focused on the pendant, tried to remember the words from my grandfather's book. They felt like a tether, anchoring me against the shadows waiting behind the veil of darkness. "What door does this open?" I called out, straining to hear the whispers that begged for release. "What do you want from us?" Suddenly, the shadows pulsed violently, and an echo of voices swelled inside, their cries reverberating like distant thunder. Among the cacophony, I heard my grandfather's voice again, fractured and pleading. "You need to let go. Not all bonds are meant to be held." My heart ached. Before I could properly sense what was happening, the pendant began to glow brighter, illuminating the crack. I felt that energy coursing through me, the power mingling with fear. The darkness above me thickened, swirling like fumes in an unseen wind, and I raised the pendant higher, channeling its energy. I had to try. "Furus, ex qualis, omnes in lusum," I shouted, my voice ringing with newfound confidence. The shadows recoiled but pulsed back, and I felt the resistance snapping harder than before. However, this time there was clarity, a purpose igniting the air around me. And then it happened that a surge of brilliance erupted from the pendant, sweeping across the clearing. In that moment, reality seemed to bend. The shadows writhed, exposing glimpses of tormented souls and fragmented memories swirling in darkness. I stammered but held steady, feeling emboldened by something deep inside me, a connection not only to the pendant, but to my grandfather and the generations before him. More figures appeared in the shadows, faces etched in despair and longing. "Help us," they pleaded in a haunting chorus, voices entwined with my own confusion. "We've been waiting to be freed." The weight of their cries sank into me, urging my heart to connect the dots. They were remnants, lost souls bound to this legacy, my legacy. Shadows cast by my ancestors' choices. Whatever power had brought this into my life was now my burden to bear. "What do you want?" I screamed against the ethereal shouts, craving clarity. "What is the truth?" As if in response, the light from the pendant jumped, phasing through the darkness like a key unlocking doors long barred. The power to choose echoed back from within the crack. To break the chains. Finally, clarity washed over me. I turned to the dog, who stood resolutely beside me, encouraging. "It's you and me, buddy," I said. We had an opportunity to confront the truth, to face the past flowing through the shadows. Together, we could rewrite the bonds that held the darkness captive. Drawing on that ancient power, I took a step closer to the crack. "I understand. This is our chance to break free. Release the echoes that linger." The glow of the pendant intensified, illuminating the figures pleading for release. With each heartbeat, I felt a flicker of connection, a bond burning with possibility. Crackling energy transitioned into a resonating silence. The shadows recoiled from the light, finally retreating, trying to cling to the remnants that had once devoured them. I felt something shift, ripples forming in the air around us. The figures began to dissolve, their anguished cries easing into whispers of gratitude. Slowly, they unraveled, fading with an exhalation, and a rush of warmth enveloped me, as if the weight of generations had lifted. In that quiet moment, I realized I could feel my grandfather's presence, joined by those lost figures. The pendant's glow centered, drawing back the darkness. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, an awakening to the power of not only the past, but the choices yet to come. As the last echoes faded, I turned my attention back to the woods. The moonlight illuminated the path behind me, beckoning me toward the unknown while releasing the grip that nearly smothered our lives. The dog at my side barked softly, and I felt the warmth of its accepting gaze. I moved cautiously towards the trees, still aware of the lingering questions. Had I truly freed my grandfather? What remained in the shadows, waiting for another moment of weakness? I didn't know, but I felt equipped to face whatever mysteries still lingered. Together, we walked away from the shadows, stepping back into the world, uncertain yet hopeful. With each step, I sensed the past as both a burden and a gift, and I would carry it forward, choosing my path wisely. As I looked back at the crack in the trees, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness had shifted, but we had only just begun to unravel the thin threads of truth binding us. With the pendant safe on my chest, I moved on, carrying the echoes of truths known but not fully realized. The woods behind me sighed, still cloaked in shadows, but now illuminated with the promise of light. After all, every choice echoes through eternity, leaving the rest of the story unwritten.